I've lived 1,000 lives. I've piloted 1,000 souls. I've killed and fought and died just for another role.
This is the Happy Jacks RPG Podcast, a roundtable discussion that's a mix of friendship, humor, unbridled enthusiasm, and tabletop RPG topics sent in from around the world.
Just for another role.
Hello, and welcome to season 34 of the Happy Jacks RPG Podcast. This is episode 1. My name is Kimmy,
My name is Riley.
and on today's show, we have many great things for you. So we actually are switching things up a little bit. A few of you suggested that we that we start going back through our archive for fun and like starting to pull out like old emails. We're going to start that in this episode, and we're just going to see how that goes.
Nice.
So our emails today: players trying to void out other PC's abilities, video games that influence our play, that was sent in from Verk, and then from the archive we have about a traveler story problem, and that is from Andrew from New England. Seamless, absolutely seamless.
Love
It's
it.
only been 2 weeks and I've already forgotten the entire
No,
intro.
you're doing
super
great.
good, doing great.
If you hadn't said anything, I wouldn't notice anything was off.
Oh,
so
perfect. Okay, it's great. It's great.
It seemed like you were taking a breath.
I think it's fine. If you'd like to contribute a question or story to the show, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. Or you can post in the mailbag channel of the Discord. Please send in stuff. We would really, really love stuff because we have very small amounts. I've realized that usually in between seasons, I do a big push. I've been getting ready for a Kickstarter, so I've been a little distracted and a little busy.
Little busy, yeah.
I forgot to do the, hey, in between season push for emails and stuff, so please do that now. Just do it now. It'd be great. All right.
If your past selves could send in emails for the archive thing, that'd be fantastic.
That would be amazing. So good. Send in questions and topics and just whatever. All right. Announcements. JackerCon is July 12th through the 14th. So it's coming up pretty quick. It's an epic weekend of online gaming and is a long tradition for us. We've been doing it, I think, like for over 10 years now. And it's something that's run by the Happy Jacks community. I kind of help organize it a little bit, and like the Discord admin stuff a bit, but so do the Discord mods. But it's all run by people in the community. It actually started organically, and they run it every year, and I just tell you about it. So go sign up. It's a great epic weekend that kind of spills into both the weekend ahead of it and the weekend after that because we have so many people in different time zones and stuff like that. So go check it out. If you go to happyjacks.org/Discord, there's already games posted too. So go post games to play, go join games. I have to post some games. I'm going to be running Starscape at some point.
Ooh.
So it should be fun.
I'm excited to see the newest version of it.
Oh, me too. Okay. Starscape is kickstarting soon. Woohoo! Go to goldenlassogames.com/Kickstarter to follow the page and be notified when the campaign goes live on July 9th. We have a date. And I can feel like my anxiety and my heart just start beating so much faster. It's so weird because it's something I've been working on for such a long time. And it's like when it's in this like nebulous place of like, yeah, I'm writing a game, you can... Yeah, it's just there and you don't have to worry about it. And now like it's at a point where, okay, an editor went through it and a person's laying it out and it's just like all this time and now people are going to look at it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and then they get to like, it's not like voting. I realize like a Kickstarter is not voting, but it sort of feels like, I don't know, like I imagine it felt like for gladiators, like back in the day and like, or in the movies where it's like thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh gosh.
When you said for Gladiator, for a second, I thought you were going to say, like, and then the Oscar votes are coming in. Is it going to win? Is it not going to win? Who knows?
I mean, it would be amazing if it
not
won an
entertaining?
Oscar, but yeah. New category for the Oscars, Best RPG.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. I know I can relate slightly because I spent a lot of last year writing a novel.
Yeah.
And this past week, I sent out my first query letters. So I have agents that are actively looking at my probably not actively. Their assistants are probably reading over a synopsis, but that kind of thing. But it is like, oh, this is the first I've gone through 2 rounds of like alpha and beta readers to give me a bunch of notes on it. And I've like updated it, revised, but like now I'm done with that step, and now it's very much like, well, if everyone I've sent it to says no, now what do I do? Like,
Yeah.
what happens next? And that's so
Yeah, that's the point. It's like, all right, so I don't know. It's just, I mean, it is a form of judgment. It's necessary for both career paths.
when you make your art a commodity, you do have to go through some commerce aspects of it.
And it's so weird, and I don't know. It's all right. Anyway, so goldenlazogames.com/Kickstarter. If you're in the future, then hopefully the Kickstarter's already running, or if you're too far in the future, hopefully you can just go buy the game, and we'll see.
If you're in the future and it's still happening, go support the Kickstarter. Share it if you can't afford, But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The best you can. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Okay.
I look forward to a new era of which game we're going to make you mad by mentioning every time we're on a stream with you.
So you're fired. Oh my gosh, who did I do that to the other day? If you, a lot of you who just listen, a lot of times in the chat and stuff like that, like, and it started in the APs. People like make a joke. They call me Gold and you've heard it in past episodes if you've listened to past episodes. So it's this joke now where I tell people they're fired, like when they do that. And I accidentally did it to someone the other day, and like in the Discord who like didn't know me, and like it was someone I thought that I knew well, but like not through Happy Jack. So they were like, What do you mean I'm fired? What did I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry, just a joke. They're like, oh okay. I think it was Sam who was on the last podcast of the last season, and he's like a game designer, and I know him through that, and I was on his podcast and stuff like that. But it's just one of those jokes, and it was like, I know everybody I know knows this joke, right? Oh no, oops, sorry, no, I'm not firing you. You're fine.
Yeah.
Not that I hired you, so I'm not sure why I would have said that to you. But anyway.
Yeah. Someone who hired you has contacted me to fire you, which is very weird, but it's true.
Yeah, so much. All right. Anyway, Indie Designer of the Month. We're still in June, and we were off for most of June, so we didn't have an Indie Designer of the Month, but we have lined up for July, which is next week.
We did just discuss an Indie Designer's Kickstarter for quite a bit of time, so
we did.
I think the Indie Designer of the Month is Kimmy.
Indie Designer of the Month for June is Kimmy. Okay. All right. So mailbag number 1. The archive email will be the third one. That's going to be how we're doing this. Yeah. So mailbag number 1 and 2 are current emails sent in, and then mailbag number 3 is from the archive. Okay. Mailbag
I will kick
number
it off
1
because you read at the beginning, so I'll give you a break on your vocals.
Thank you.
All right. Hi all. Dark Knight here from the wet and wild Pacific Northwest with a response to PC decision shyness and an issue I recently had with one PC using fictional positioning to remove another PC's ability in the game.
Ooh.
First off, during episode 33, episode 25, a listener wrote in saying he struggled with adventuring parties, has spent long periods of time debating even the smallest character decisions because of the end-game ramifications of their choices might have. I have faced hyper-tactical gaming that slows down gameplay in past sessions I have run. It seems most common in gamers who primarily play D&D, but I digress. Outside of planning sessions at a hideout or discussions that the PCs have during PC downtime, I typically frame all conversations at the gaming table as being in character unless the PCs specifically state they are doing or saying something out of character. If they jump out of character and talk tactics while one player is presented with an in-game choice where the PCs don't have time to talk out their options, I ask them to hold the discussion until after the die roll. This helps to highlight each character's differences, creates interesting gameplay and interactions, and helps keep the game tempo high. There are also some fun oh no moments that come along too, like when the low charisma barbarian tries to ask a local dignitary for help. Occasional failures are good for the game and they help keep the story fun. Just my 2 cents. On another note, I was recently a player in a Wild West RPG where I was playing a conman/liar PC. All the players created characters prior to the game to save pre-game time. Myself and another gamer unknowingly created almost the exact same conman character with the same background as doctors. We agreed that since it was the frontier, we likely knew each other and had worked together previously. From that point on, whenever my PC tried to lie about something or con the other player, that PC just said they knew me too well and they could see through anything my player was doing. Through fictional positioning and with no dice rolls, the other player removed my agency as a con man in the game. It made for some frustrating gameplay, maybe a case of fictional positioning being taken too far. Have you ever had one player use fictional positioning to completely void another player's shtick, bypass large portions of the game, etc.? Are there limits to fictional positioning, and if so, how do you deal with a player who is overusing or abusing fictional positioning as an in-game tool? Keep on gaming, Dark Knight. I want to say before we get too deep into this conversation, what was described in that paragraph to me does not sound like fictional positioning. It sounds like metagaming.
Yeah.
Like if, like you said, like there was no dice rolls and nothing that you could do. Like that's like it was established the two characters knew each other, but that would still be like, to use D&D standards at least, an insight check or whatever game system you're using, some sort of read the vibe.
Yeah.
Like, so a person just saying, no, I already know this and it's like, I'm not going to fall for it. Like, that does feel like a contested role. Like, oh, your body language, like if you know a character is a liar or whatever, fine. And I've been in this situation too, where I've played a character that the players knew was a liar. Like I played like a femme fatale character in like a noir themed game, and it was kind of like, all right, you as players know my character is shady, but like your characters are designed to like kind of be a little naive about stuff like this. So why are we not rolling to determine insight checks or things like that? So that feels like a part where, in this case, I think a GM should have stepped in and required a roll, which is kind of like what was being said earlier. But yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, especially like maybe you have maybe they have a, whatever system you're using, some sort of penalty against, for, rolling to fool that player because they know each other and they're both kind of con men. So they already know they already kind of know, the tricks.
Yeah.
So they're like, I know what I would say in this situation. You're saying the exact same thing. So I can see why there might be a penalty, but to just have it be a blanket thing where they never are fooled, that doesn't seem fair. And I also have the question, like, does it work the other way around? Like, are you also never fooled by them? Because then I could see it maybe being an interesting dynamic where neither of you can fool each other.
Yeah.
So you have to, like, work together, convince each other. But it sounds very one-sided, which isn't fair at all.
Yeah.
I've had situations kind of like this in games where forever ago when I was playing a D&D game, I played like a Warforged, and my take on the Warforged was it was basically like an ace character. It had no romantic interest, period. And there was another character in the party who was very sexual and everybody wanted them, and it was just how they built their characters. Like they were just like charisma up the wazoo, and like everybody fell in love with them everywhere, and they had a problem with the fact that my character didn't. And I feel like it's a little bit of a different situation because it wasn't that I just didn't fall for just their character. It was like, no, I have no interest of that type in any characters.
Yeah.
So if it's something like that where it's a little more blanket, I think that can make sense. But something like this where it's like you can fool everyone else except them, and for just this one reason because you used to know each other. Like, I don't know. I feel I agree. Like maybe put some boundaries on that. Like if it's an ex-lover who you used to have money problems with, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like maybe you can't fool them about money stuff or something like that. If there's like give a backstory reason, so then there's like parameters.
Yeah.
If you work together as doctors, maybe you can't fool them on selling them whatever snake oil you're trying to sell.
Yeah.
Because they know that. So I can see that, but on no lies at all?
Yeah, like I think like the example that's popping in my head is from the MCU, like Loki, who is like constantly lying. Like that's part of like Loki's character, and it really does take until like the third Thor movie for Thor to like stop falling for it and then like play it off like he's falling for it and actually be tricking Loki back. And I feel like if that was a game, a series of roles would have happened for Thor to pick up on, like, I know this move of Loki's, I know this results of it, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, like, I think then when you get to the Loki series, and you've got Loki and Sylvie, who are basically two versions of the same character and have a lot of the same, like, traits, and they are able to kind of get a fast one by each other, or vice versa, or not. And, like, I do think there is, like, fine, if you want to say, like, oh, this character has a lower difficulty on this check, or has disadvantage, or on this lie, that kind of thing, that makes total sense. But I do think that this whole thing of, like, nope, I know you, and I'm not going to roll for it, like that, first of all, as a GM, as soon as your characters at your table are saying, I automatically do this thing, that's when you step in and go, oh, sorry, we are playing a role-playing game, and that's not how this works.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so, like, that, is bad behavior on the other player, absolutely. But I also think that is definitely a case of a GM not asserting a little bit of authority over the situation, because that's like their role in the game at that point. So.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
It's hard as a player to make another player force a roll, but you can make the GM do it. Like,
yeah, and well, I feel like you should at least say that about yourself. They're like, "Oh, you can't fool me," and you're like, "Well, I want to try."
yeah,
Like, I should have a right to try that.
yeah,
And whatever system you're using, like, has hypothetically mechanics for that. So I also, yeah, like don't be passive about that. Like, like if you're in this situation, like, be like, no, I feel like I feel good today. Like, I feel like maybe I can get one off on you. It's fine. And like, just let's roll for it. That's why we use dice mechanics in these games. Like,
yeah.
otherwise, just do improv, friends. Like, it's fun. And but
even in improv, we have rules about like no
Yeah.
butting, like yes and this, like add to it. So like if you think this person is lying to you, then maybe your result shouldn't be, oh, I lie back to you, I know you're lying, it's fine. Maybe your response should be, okay, you're gonna con me, I'm gonna con you back. Like I'm gonna fine. If I don't believe, like, this is what I'm gonna do. Like have fun with it, play into the character. What would your con artist do if this person was trying to con you? Would you just go nope, or would you try to figure out how you can make it your thing? Like how would you try to get leverage over them for whatever you want to have? So yeah.
I think also it's interesting because I think a big part of that could be solved by like what Dark Knight suggests in the paragraph above that about having conversations in character. Because I think having that conversation in character between those two con doctors, like suddenly that becomes a very different thing, because they're not like it's easy as a player to say, oh no, you can't fool me because I've known you.
Yeah.
It's harder to say that in character.
Yeah.
Because then there's no way to break out of that and do, like you were saying, the metagaming aspect of it.
Yeah.
While you're staying in character. You're like, oh, you can't fool me. I've known you too long. And then you're like, really?
Yeah.
Let's try it.
Or
and
someone's like, I've known you too long and you can't fool me. And you go, well, then you should know that I'm telling you the absolute truth right now.
Yeah.
And if you know me so well, you should trust me when I'm telling you this is the truth. Like that kind of like level. And it's a gambit. You might end up like, if you are lying, you might like fall for that. But yeah. Also, I think like what's happening too, I feel like, is there are different kinds of table cultures when it comes to PC secrets.
Yeah.
And I think that like some tables, it's okay for everyone at the table to know the secrets outside of game and like still role play the game or whatever. I think it's a little bit harder when we're doing shows for audiences, because sometimes you want to have that moment of like the other people going, oh my god, wait, what? Like there's that fun, like you want the kind of like performance aspect of reacting to a secret. But I also think like sometimes when you're playing games, I like to have an open table where everyone knows everything out of character.
Yeah.
Not like story stuff as a DM necessarily, because what's the fun of like playing games? You already know where it's gonna go. Yeah. But as far as like party dynamics, like if we know that somebody is like secret nobility, like it's okay if the other players know that and the characters don't. Like, because we should expect people to be able to play here while their player brain is up here and the character brain is down here. Like, you should be able to stay in this space and not let this space affect you. But not everybody plays like that. Some people do like it, like, to compartmentalize. Like, they want to be surprised by things. They want to like not know everything ahead of time, and that's also fine. But that's also like a thing where session zeros come into play. So you should have these conversations of like if you have these conversations ahead of time of, we decided that our characters knew each other and worked together previously, that means there should also be a conversation of like, how well do we know each other's like ticks? Like, is that pretty? If not, then roles are involved. Yeah.
Especially it's like, how did you know each other previously? Were you doctors together?
Yeah.
Or were you con men together?
Yeah.
Because that is a very different set of like how you understand each other. Because maybe you worked together as doctors and you had no idea that you were both swindling people on the side.
Yeah.
So you think you're both totally legitimate medical practitioners, and then you suddenly are like, it's like that Spider-Man meme where they're like pointing at each other. Wait, you are what? And I don't know. I think that would be a fun moment. But yeah.
I also think if you and another player have unknowingly both created the exact same character, I feel like that is a flaw in character setup. Like, I think that like you should be like, I get you're doing it to save time before the game, but it does feel like there should be at least like a converse. Like, it's like if you're playing, for example, a Powered by the Apocalypse game, you're not supposed to use the same playbook for two people.
Yeah.
So because the idea is like you're playing archetypes, and it's fine. Like there are some role playing games where you can have two people of the same class or character type for sure. I will go. I can go on a whole tangent about how I think D&D party balance rules don't exist anymore in 5th edition,
Yeah.
and you can play a whole party of the same class and have a pretty solid game.
Yeah.
But I still think that if you're both playing con artist doctors, like unless you really, like I said, were we both running cons? Like, did you know the doctor in the next town over was also a con? Is it the kind of thing where like it's like the Monstrous Regiment where actually everybody here is secretly like in disguise? Is it like that, or is it like, oh no, we both were at the same convention, we were both conning and we didn't know the other one was a con artist? Like that's the kind of thing you need to have those conversations about ahead of time, or say like. I think if you're going to make characters ahead of time and not discuss them with each other, you need to have a backup character in case somebody makes the exact same character you did.
Yeah, that's so bizarre to me because, like, I've been running a bunch of actual plays for strangers lately, actually, as part of, like, Starscape marketing and stuff. And even people, like, I don't know, and it's, like, a timed thing. You're like, okay, we're starting the game at this time. So everyone comes, and it's, like, we in Discord or text or whatever, we're like, hey, I'm making this character. I'm making this character. And it's just 2 sentences of like the character concept so things don't overlap too much. I don't think I've ever played even at a convention. Like there's like the pre-gens, or if you're making them at the table, you make sure and you just like, okay, I think I'm gonna make an elf, archer, ranger type character who's like very noble and interesting, and you just kind of throw out your concepts.
Yeah.
So there's not too much overlap because that just kind of ruins the fun of it unless you're designing it to play that way.
Yeah.
It can be very fun to play, okay, we're superpowered twins. We have the same exact powers because, the story's going to be more about the emotional aspects or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But just accidentally making the such a close character concept.
Yeah.
Like it would have been maybe even more interesting if like one of them had been a doctor and one of them had been, I don't know, something else interesting, because I can't think of anything right now. Because immediately the minute, a horse trader, whatever, and they're both con artists, and I don't know.
One of them sold boys bands
There
all
you
over
go.
this. He didn't know the territory.
Yeah, a pickle salesman. Like anything would have been more interesting if they were together. So just the strangest thing, and it's like then it would be interesting to have like these 2 like con artists doing that. But I think the hardest thing too is like for face characters like that.
Yeah.
Like if you double up on different like fighting specialties or whatever, or if you have, like you were saying, if you've got 2 tanks in a party, okay, that's cool. Having 2 face characters, it seems like oftentimes it seems like they just end up competing and like, oh, is it your turn to talk? Because okay, like it's a lot of the same lane.
Yeah. I remember one of my first 5th edition games I ever played, I played a bard, like, face character, and then somebody else was playing, like, a soldier, and then kept doing all the social stuff, and, like, interrupt, and like, cool, man, you did all the fighting, and now you're taking over so I don't get to play it all today. Like, that's, so, like, so if you, like, build a character with the intention of being the face, and then somebody else shows up as the face, you're like, okay, like, There are some games where that would work. Like I think a Forged in the Dark game with a few different con artists. Like, oh, you're like a team of con artists. That would make sense. But Wild West, like, you're probably gonna want like a gunslinger. You're probably gonna want like even like Tombstone. Like, yes, both like Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp are like gunslingers, but like Doc Holliday is very different from Wyatt Earp. Like, like they're not the same kind of gunslinger. They're not the same kind of lawman or anything. Yeah.
I'm your Huckleberry. Best like catchphrase. But yeah, absolutely. And and again, that's a situation where like the GM should step in, because it's easy for people who are naturally like talky face people to step into that role, even if their character doesn't fit in that role, because they know what to say. And so that's one of those things that like the GM really needs to be kind of adjudicating. Okay, so roll for that. Like, you made a great little speech there. Let's see what the dice say about that. Or just like, hey, like, and you may not want to do it like at the table, but you're playing the meathead with like very low intelligence stat. Like, you probably should, like, I get you are good at talking.
Yeah.
But your character's probably not that good at talking, so let's keep that in mind, So, and then, there's the thespians and the spotlight hogs who I love many of them dearly.
Yeah.
But
I
sometimes
might
they
be
need
that
reminders.
person, so yeah, and I get that, and it's something I work on and try to fix. So
It's
yeah.
a lot of our crew.
Wait, a lot of people who play RPGs on streams
What?
are also people who like the camera and the spotlight and attention.
Amazing.
I don't understand.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Hang on, I have 5 more thoughts on this. But yeah, this feels like that. There's a lot of moments here. Like there is absolutely bad PC behavior here, but I think there's also a lot of structural things that went wrong here that let this happen. So
Yeah.
that's the end of it.
And I can't tell. I don't think it's malicious.
No.
So it's like, like, it's always tell my daughter, it's like, because she's like, someone at some point got it in her head, I'm being bad. I don't know if she saw it on a cartoon or something like that. She's like, I'm being bad. I'm like, no, you made a mistake. You're not bad. You just made a mistake. I feel like that's this like entire situation in here.
Yeah.
None of you are bad. You just made a mistake and we can fix it.
Yeah, and I do think like an answer for Dark Knight's question that doesn't involve like, oh, fix these other structures. Like in case the same thing happens without some of these things that led to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the actual solution is like if it happens a couple times and you're frustrated, I think that's when you talk to your game master about it and just say like, hey, you know, I did build this character to play them and I'm not really getting a chance to play them. And then you can have a conversation of like, is there a way that you as a GM can like direct this better so that, or not, but don't say better, but like direct this in a way that like I can be involved the way that I intended to build this character. Or if my character won't work for your game because of the way this is set up, should I make a new character?
Yeah.
Like during our downtime or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Have your con doctor ride off into the sunset and someone new shows up in town.
yeah, happens all the time in the West.
Ba-na-na, all right. Excellent. Very good. Is that, you think that's
I
wrapped?
think all my thoughts on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think you get your thoughts on that?
I think so. I think
Good.
so. All right. Mailbag number 2. Dear Empress Kimmy and her Jacker Court, this email may not work depending on who is hosting this week, but I will trudge along.
You came the right week. Yep. I am ready for you. I saw what this is about already, and I'm on board.
Many people have now played the video game Baldur's Gate 3. For anyone that doesn't know, it's a video game based on the rule set of D&D 5e. If you like video games and haven't played it, just play it. Trust me.
Agreed.
Disagree.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But you also you're not a big D&D fan either. So
Yes. Anyway, the game does change a few rules from the tabletop game. Mostly it's stuff like removing holding an action or changing how many short rests you can take. Stuff that makes sense for the video game. But here in the...
I think it's
But here is the thing. Some of the changes are just better. Little things like health spells work better out of combat, or being able to throw potions. On top of that, it's done with what I thought was impossible. The combat in 5e is exciting. Not just with the rules, but with the dynamic combat mats, movement mattering, jumping being useful, just to name a few. It has honestly changed how I run trad games now. So my question, how has BG3, or really any video game, influenced how you GM or play? Verk from DC. PS, Drake. PPS, join the Discord. happyjacks.org/Discord. And PPPS, send in emails. Yes, thank you.
So I will say before, just as a little bit of self-promotion, and it might be buried now on the page because we have a lot of new content, but I actually did write an article for D&D Beyond exactly about this, and it was basically how does playing Baldur's Gate 3 make you a better DM? So I'm sad that I don't have my list. I might look it up and see if I can find some of my answers for it, but there were a lot of things that I thought that BG3 did, even things that didn't necessarily change the game, but that made me like, oh yeah, I mean, like, they're not things that weren't true before Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 really underlined it for me. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example off the top of my head. Oh, here's a good one. It was like, I think we talked about it on this show before too, out of this context, but it was like, if you're DMing, you should treat player choices on their character sheet like a wish list. Like if a character makes a character, like let's say your character makes, I don't know, a con artist or another con artist, you should probably make things that happen in your game that require them to use those dual con artist skills. Like that's the kind of thing that I think, so one thing I think was really impressive about Baldur's Gate 3 is that every type of D&D character that you can build in that game, there is something really specific to that character build that you can do in the game. And like there are problems in the game that might have different solutions or different ways to go about them based on the kind of character that you build.
Yeah.
Like there are monsters that you can literally talk into dying. Like if you're a high charisma character, there are different traps that you can disarm easier if you have like the knock spell, or like there's a whole section of the game you can skip if you have the knock spell. And I learned that because it's a really repetitive section if you play the game a bunch in a row like I did. So I was really glad to learn that you could do that. But there's things like that, or like if you have a rogue who can crack locks easier earlier levels, there's a lot of stuff that like you might not be able to access early on, and so on, stuff like that. And so there is definitely a thing about DMing where it's like, okay, my players built these characters for these things. I need to make sure that they get opportunities to do the cool things they put on their sheets.
Yeah. Baldur's Gate 3 is a sensitive topic in my household.
Fair.
Yeah. My husband and I love playing video games together. So we like every year we pick 1 or 2 big video games that we play through together. And if it's a single player game, like we either create a character together and take turns, or we each create characters and we like watch each other go through it. It's like our little cozy little thing we do every night. My husband was so excited to play Baldur's Gate 3 with me. Like he got it. He's like, all right, we're going to start tonight. It'll be great. It's like, you're going to love it. 'Cause it's like tabletop role playing, right? Oh my God. So we get through the first part of it, and so far I love it. Like the first thing, it's like all great, and I'm not gonna spoilers, I don't want to say anything. We get to like the next part, and we get to the first like group combat, and I'm saying, okay, this has been so great so far. I love it, and the characters are amazing, and it's so beautiful. I love everything about it. And then we're going, and it's like turn-based combat with NPCs having turns, and I was just like, oh God, I'm gonna lose my mind. I hate everything about this. Why am I waiting for every NPC to have a turn? What is happening? I want a video game where I can just like swing stuff, like do the thing. So that was the last night we played.
That's fair. See, as someone who grew up on like Final Fantasy games, and Final Fantasy got rid of turn-based combat eventually, sort of, I think. I haven't played it in a long time. I haven't played since 13, sorry. But I loved turn-based combat, and I was so excited that Baldur's Gate actually had it, because so many video games don't do it anymore. And that 100%, what I like about playing Baldur's Gate, reason why I like it so much is it scratches the itch for me of getting friends together to play specifically D&D, which I very much like to do still, and I like having, and it's like a virtual tabletop times 10. Like it is all, so it's wildly fun for that reason. And I had months of my life where 2 of my friends and I were basically on like voice chat almost every night for like weeks at a time, playing Baldur's Gate 3 together. And I got obsessed with like, oh well, if I play it this way and I make these choices, what happens? Oh, but if I play it this way and make these choices, what happens? And it was such a like it was an ADHD just attention grabber for me for so long. But I also understand, like, if you don't like turn-based combat, especially in video games, I can understand. And that is not an uncommon complaint about the game, and I almost wish they had found a way to make it so you could do without it, but I also think it'd be very hard to play a lot of those spells and stuff with it without it. But
I might try again at some point, because I loved the story and I really loved the characters. I just like, I don't know. I have to be in the every few years I get the itch to play D&D, and maybe I'll just wait, and then when I get that itch, instead of playing D&D, I'll just play Baldur's Gate 3 instead. I do think that it's interesting, because when I first started GMing, open world GMing, kind of like what we've called sandbox GMing, was less common, especially at the conventions that I was going to and things like that. I mean, more of us have come through this way now. When I first started playing, I was one of the younger people in, the RPG kind of scene, and my group of friends. All of them had started playing TTRPGs before I was born, a long time ago. And then some of them had later gotten into video games and some of them hadn't. I had the opposite experience, where I started in video games and then picked up tabletop RPGs. So I feel like playing all those games, especially because I was really into MMOs, as anybody who's listened to the show for any period of time knows. So I had always had that really open world experience in video games. Like, I'd played more traditional video games too, Tomb Raiders, all those things. But it wasn't until like Ultima Online and WoW later on, and I played ElfQuest for a while, but where literally in Ultima Online, they had some quests, but you just basically fought monsters. There weren't really quests or storylines or anything like that unless you made them yourselves or unless actual characters played by GMs came into the world and did like events basically. And if you missed an event, it never happened again. It wasn't like there's quests that you could do a million times to gain points or anything.
Yeah.
So I had that experience first where I literally could go anywhere in the world and try anything. And that's how I came up role playing. So eventually when I came to tabletop role playing, I just kind of already had that vision. Like I was thinking in the scope of instead of a pathway of, I have to follow this story. It was literally like, there's a world, go find stuff to do. So I think my love of video games really changed how I just approached and thought of role playing in general, and then I brought those skills to tabletop.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that I never was a big MMO player personally. I've always liked games that have a story to them, but I also do like games like when they're good, the Assassin's Creed series, where you have the open world exploring thing, but there are still stories and plots that are happening within that world. And I think one of the things that was really fun for me about Baldur's Gate 3, not to make this all about Baldur's Gate 3, but that was the question email.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Baldur's Gate 3 is really good at making it seem like an open world, but it actually isn't, because you're actually in a fixed location for each act of the game.
Yeah.
And you can leave, but if you do, like, things are done. Like, it's like, yeah, you've moved on from that section, you can't go back there and do stuff anymore. But the game really is good at, like, setting it like, oh, these things happen in these places. When you go there, they will activate, and they'll be happening. And so, as a GM, like, it's good to be able to go, like, I can give my players room to explore, and I can still have ideas of what I want to happen. And the nice thing is when you're working at a tabletop versus a video game, you don't have to go in ahead of time with a tabletop game versus a video game. You don't have to go in and pre-program every single thing that might happen in response to what players will do in tabletop.
Oh, yeah.
You can just kind of have a vague idea of where you want the story to go, and then let them figure out where the map goes to get there, and then kind of have things go in like you could have, if you have important information that an NPC is supposed to give these players, and you need to have that information get out there for the game to go on, and they don't talk to that NPC, you can give that information to a different NPC, and that's okay to do, because you're at a table. They don't know what you were planning. They don't know that it went wrong. They think, what a smart thing. I remember one time listening to somebody talk about why they were absolutely sure that Critical Role was scripted 100%. And the excuse they gave was there was like a detective thing happening where they were following clues, and they're like, if this was a real D&D game, they might have spent an hour chasing down that other lead, and then it wouldn't have gone anywhere. And I was like, that says more about your DMing than it does about anything that you're trying to prove here. Because if you're DMing and your players follow a clue for over an hour and you give them nothing, that's on you as a DM, because you could have easily been like, oh, the dirt leads back to this warehouse that has all the stuff in it that I want to use. Like, I have a map for this warehouse. Fine, lead them to a warehouse. Like it's very easy to do just a half bit of improv to get back to your railroad, basically.
Yeah.
Without the players ever knowing they're being railroaded. Because I think we get a lot of there's a lot of talk about sandbox versus railroad, and I feel like for a long time there was really this idea that sandbox is 100% the right way to go and railroading is bad, and I don't think that's true. And I think even you mentioned like con games. If you're playing a one-shot, you've got to have it on some rails. And I think if you're playing a game for streaming and you have an audience that's watching it, and especially when you're doing like shorter sessions, you kind of have to have some rails, because you have to be able to like tell a cohesive story that people are watching and enjoying to some degree. Yeah. I mean,
I think it's, I'm going to sound like a jerk. Like I don't need it. But like I don't really ever plan things. And I think but that's something that has been a skill that I've built up. And there's like going back to Critical Role, like they're performers, they're professional performers. So they have that feeling of, okay, we need to wrap this part up. It's getting boring. Yeah. So then they move there. So it can make things feel more scripted than it is. Yeah.
They're also playing like 6 or 7 hour games sometimes. So like they're definitely also meandering.
But like I ran a game yesterday that is recorded for an actual play with a group I didn't know. And it was like we recorded 3 1-hour sessions, like all at once, but they had to be sessions. So at the end of each hour, I had to have the story wrapped up. Yeah. And it's just something that, I mean, it's like hitting a baseball or diving into a pool or something. Once you do it enough times, you get that feeling for it.
Yeah.
I think the problem is one, there's a lot of crossover in the Venn diagram of railroad and
Control
sandbox, and those two things. And there's a happy medium there that
100%.
has to happen. So it's like, once you have an idea of where you're going, then like kind of stick to that.
Yeah.
Like you can, if something amazing comes up, sure, pivot off of it. You don't have to force them. I think that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
And that I think it's something that I play less and less. I've played personally less and less video games as I've gotten more into tabletop. One, because I don't have time. I have like this streaming thing I'm running and all these people I'm hurting and cats. It's wild.
Fair.
Like
And you have a
the
job.
people are the cats, by the way, and a
And
toddler
you have
now.
you have a toddler and a Kickstarter,
And a Kickstarter.
which is like a
So many
toddler
things.
with numbers.
But
yeah.
angry, it's like angry toddler all the time.
Yeah.
It's just like, do that thing right now, okay?
Yeah.
But I don't know where I was going with that. I had a thing. It was great. It was gonna be super awesome. Oh, but I think people are busy judging a lot of times. It's when you are forcing people back onto that, and that's one of the things I think that's kind of I've started to see that more. I've started to see the rails in video games more as I've I remembered where I was supposed to be. Which I think sometimes really annoys me.
Yeah, that's fair.
So it's like, and sometimes you have to have them there.
Yeah. Some games are designed to be on rails. Like I would say Last of Us is a pretty on rails game.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And I didn't, for the part I played of Baldur's Gate, I didn't mind it at all.
Yeah.
There are times though that I get really annoyed. Like Witcher 3 was like, I literally just like turned it off. I was so mad. Like I was playing through and it wasn't even a quest or anything. Literally it was like riding through the countryside because shocker, one of my favorite things to do in video games is to get a nice horse and just ride.
It's so fun. Yeah.
I just love it. And I was just riding and I like literally this beautiful place and I just hit the wall. There wasn't actually anything there. They didn't design like a cliff. It was literally just like the invisible force field wall where you can't go past there as a character. And you're just like, can you at least like program a cliff or
like
some
a tree forest that I can't get through? Yeah.
Something like anything other than this beautiful field that I want to ride through that just I like do the like I can't run past this. It's
I
so
respect
annoying.
Assassin's Creed does a good job of it where it's like, oh, that's the border of the memory. Like the memory starts to fade away a little bit. That's always really good. Although it is funny because when you play Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is set in ancient Greece, the world, you just like when you get to the edge you go all the way west, you end up all the way east. And I'm like, that is not how the Mediterranean worked. And like,
The first time that happened, I was so confused.
Yeah.
Because I played the shit out of that game. I loved that game so much.
I spent, that was like my pandemic game where like whenever I was like miserable and alone and it was like also like weird in LA, like, and like I would just go run into ancient Greece and run around and be gay and do crimes.
So
like
good.
it was great.
Yeah.
But
I feel like that like has been another takeaway from video games is if you're gonna have rails or walls, like make them be as natural or invisible as possible. Like make them part of the surroundings, so it's not just you can't go there. Why?
Yeah.
Because that's not where the story is.
Yeah.
Like go that way.
Yeah. The only thing that Baldur's Gate 3 does that is like that is a little frustrating is like, for example, when you go to like there's like a mountain passage and there's a pop-up. It's like this might be a little bit of your player level, which is what a DM would probably say, like, hey guys, maybe don't go there yet. But like but I do feel like the game could probably do a tiny better job of like just not having that accessible yet at that time frame. Like the way like some games like, oh, the bridge is out, and so you get here. Like that is kind of like what happens with like moving from Act 2 to Act 3 without saying much. The bridge, like you can't pass a certain area yet because of like things that are happening over there.
Yeah.
Whereas like there was one section where you absolutely can just move in, but that game doesn't stop you. It just makes the game way harder on you if you don't. And it actually makes like, hey, you chose to go that way instead of resolving plots that were here. So while you were gone, those plots got resolved and not in the ways you wanted them to. So that's like a good way to do it. A couple of other things that I think Baldur's Gate 3 has really influenced how I GM. And like I know we talked once on this show before about Skyrim and the way we like Skyrim.
I was trying so hard not to bring that up because I feel like I talk about that game all the time. And it's like 10 years old now.
Yeah. I know.
It makes me feel it's like someone had an article the other day. It was like 10 years of Skyrim. I was like, oh,
I think it's more than 10 years old. At this
I know.
point.
It just, I felt like stabbed in the heart.
Yeah, because I saw an article. I think it's been 6 years since Elder Scrolls 6 was first teased.
Yeah.
Because I know that I started at my old job 12 years ago, and I know that I bought Skyrim when I was just starting at my job, and I know that it was not new then. But back to Baldur's Gate 3 for me for a second. Couple of things that I think are really interesting is I really like the way that Baldur's Gate 3 makes player choices impactful to the overall story, or not even the overall story sometimes, but like side quests. Like there are things where like if you don't save this person in this act, then you don't get a side quest in Act 3. But also if you like make this dark choice in one act, then something really dark is happening in Act 3. And like I can't say more without spoiling for people who haven't played it yet, but there are some where you're like, I can't play, and like there are some really rewarding subplots that only play out all the way if you do all the parts as the story goes on. So it really feels cool. Like, oh, I'm so glad. I've played the same subplot different ways sometimes because I want to see what the difference is in different versions of it. And like, it can be like, as far as like nothing happened, or it can be like, oh, this whole group of people got slaughtered because of what you did. Like that can be what happens, and it's really interesting. And then also, I think when you have players who like players who make interesting, like, oh, they players connect with certain characters, like NPCs, even if you weren't planning on it, like, but if you can make it happen, I think it's fun to like bring NPCs back in later acts and kind of progress their story a little bit. And it makes the feeling of the world is different because of like you being part of it, but also because it's a living world where things happen. So it can be fun to have somebody who's like, well, I'm trying to set up my own shop in this town. And then like, if you cut back to like an area where it's like years later, you can be like, oh, that person has developed a new shop, or they're traveling the world as a merchant, or those kinds of things, or like those kinds of things can matter. And so I think Baldur's Gate 3 really does a good job of making it feel like the world is living, whether you're there or not, but also the things that you do impact it. And so those are two kind of separate things, but I feel like they kind of do the same kind of result. And as a DM, it like really made me go, oh, I need to be thinking more about that. I need to be thinking more about like, even if I'm running a module and it's all a printed story, which going back real quickly to that railroad sandbox thing.
Yeah.
If you're running a published adventure, you're railroading. Like there is railroads there because your adventure is going on a story.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of, the railroad can go different routes to get to those mountains, but it's getting through those mountains.
Yeah.
So, but like, even if you're running a module, I still always cater my module to what the players are doing and what that's why I can run the same module multiple times and have totally different. I have run there's like a Murkmire thing in Keys to the Golden Vault. It's like a level 1 adventure, and I've been doing a little bit of pro DMing recently. And so a lot of times when I have new players, I run that exact same module for them, and I've had people do very different things each time based on it.
Yeah.
But I also be like, if somebody makes a choice early in the session like that, like if they choose to try to like schmooze the wrong guard and they fail, that guard is going to be important later in the story. Like, it's not like you leave that room and that guard's, it's not like one thing some video games are bad about, and there's a whole sketch group that has a lot of fun with this, of like the guard just like resets and goes back to walking around. And I'm like, great. But I think that like one thing that's really fun in role playing is you are not a computer.
Yeah.
You are a person, and you can go, okay, well, you just made that guard suspect you. Now I have a guard wandering this museum and you didn't deal with them, and now they're going to be a problem for you later on as things go.
Yeah.
And like,
I think that's the magic of tabletop games. It's like having that ability to have things fluid and change, and having someone with an imagination kind of running things. And I think it's the Mass Effect games that like were like super notorious for, no matter what story path you chose, eventually like you all got wedged back into the story in the same place.
Yeah.
And it didn't end up actually mattering a lot of what you did, because
the first Coder game's a lot like that. Yeah. Like you kind of get the light or dark ending, but that's all the really differences are. The second game is a little bit more fixed on that, or a little bit more, but yeah.
I mean, part of that's also like the phenomenally more like powerful that they have for the programs now.
Yeah.
So having that many different options is an option. It didn't used to be.
Yeah. BG3 has like some of the most dialogue trees of any game ever made.
Yeah.
So it's like
so many.
Yeah.
I can't imagine writing all of that, honestly. Like as a DM, like you get to make stuff up. Like they hit that moment and you're like, oh, okay, like you can get to come up, and sometimes you do. This is Bob Guy, the guard. It's not always like winning dialogue, but
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you don't have to like sit and plan it all.
One of the things that I am actually the most impressed of with Baldur's Gate 3 is the amount of work that they had to put into thinking of ways that players would try to break the game. And like the amount of like there's one that I found online at one point, somebody pointed out like there's a character you can go on a date with, and there's a bartender on that date who is a character who is a bartender at a pub in the city. If you kill that character before you have the date, there is a different character with a different name. And similarly, like early on in the game, this is not a major spoiler, but there are a bunch of tieflings that you have to either help or hurt in some way or another. And like there's a party at one point that has those tieflings involved. I won't say how you get it or what happens at the party, but if you can sneakily go around and kill all those tieflings before the party happens, but still cause the party to happen, the game has written in replacement tieflings for all of them. And some of them are tieflings who were at the town, and you can kill those ones too. And there's a third layer deep of replacement tieflings that can be, it's like the fact that somebody at Larian with it right, I go, okay, so if they try to kill these characters, what do we do? Like, we know we have this person alive, but there's a good chance they won't be alive. And there's a lot of times in that game where I've played it a bunch of times now, and there's a character that I know was there for a scene, but because they died in this so my friends and I always joke that we're playing a weird time loop, and so we're playing people that are in these, like, so whenever we make a mistake, when we're playing multiplayer, we'll go, all right, we'll get on the next loop.
Yeah.
So.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad I didn't have to do that. I just make stuff up in the moment. All right, mailbag number 3 from the archive in 2018. All right. I guess I can. Okay.
Well, you have the second one, so I'll read the third one.
Okay.
All right. Hello, humble jackers. My players need your help, and we play again in 2 weeks. I bet you that you've played by this point.
Yeah.
So they will probably be dead by the time you read this. The backstory, we just started our new...
To be clear, these are emails we answered in the past. So these people got answers, some of them, I assume, and because I don't remember 2018 at all. But I don't know, it's fun to see if we have new advice, new perspectives, and new advice. So we didn't actually make this person wait this many years to hear an answer for an email. Yeah. All right. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. Hello, humble jackers. So probably all be dead. I hope they mean the characters and not the players themselves by the time you read this. The backstory, we just started our new Traveler game and everything was going great. They got tricked and is fighting some repo men. The obtuse sniper was dragged through a ritzy art gala, and they spent a couple hours arguing about how they complete the extremely well-paying but near impossible job. I was a happy GM until a simple set of jump rolls. The astrogation was perfect, plenty of power and fuel, and then the J-Drive operator rolled snake eyes. Oof. Well, it's been a while, so we were following the book for the rules on doing a jump. If the roll is exceptionally bad, you change course by 1D by 1D. At first, it sounded great. They will be lost in a system, have to make some emergency landing. They will have to fight to survive and get more fuel. The game will write itself. Only that's not what happened. I allowed the player that failed to make rolls for his mistake. That was a mistake. Another awful roll that managed to send them straight out of the Imperium and into barren, empty space. Oh, and did I mention I was the idiot that decided to use a projector to leave the star map up so all my players could see it? So there was no changing where they went. They could see it.
Oh, yeah.
They could count out the misjump for themselves.
If you haven't played Traveler, there's actually like this massive mapped out universe that's huge, and there's one online, or there used to be, I don't know if, and in 2018 it was still up, I don't know if it is now, but like you can go through, it's massive, it's huge, so you can actually track yourself through these giant space jumps, and there's planets that have all been added. It's just amazing. But yeah, so no wiggle room there.
Now my players are alone, have no fuel, and are 2 parsecs away from the next closest system. So what did I do? I ended the session.
Yeah!
Gotta leave them on a cliffhanger, right?
Yeah.
While picking up, they all started throwing out some ideas on what they would do and wondering what their next characters might be. Now is where I have to say, Scott, if you are still listening, shame on you, shut off the podcast. I think Scott probably knows what happened at this point.
Yeah.
You know better than the metagame. I have con artist with you in many a space doctor establishments, and I already know. Take a second and have a drink.
Woohoo!
Oh, actually, mine's empty. I'll have to hydrate. I'm gonna get up and get water when I'm done reading this.
Okay.
Here's where I am at. One of the players is actually a well-decorated admiral that was being made a duke before an accident in cryo left him stranded with amnesia. The captain and first mate know who he is and have already stated that their fallback plan is broad waving a message that they have him and he's alive. I also have my meta pilot happening in the area and can happen past them.
Meta plot,
sorry. I am now stuck between not wanting to start unraveling the meta plot right away, throwing out the amnesiac admiral in the first session, and just a cheesy excuse like a barrel of fuel falls into your ship. And just a cheesy excuse like a barrel of fuel falls into your ship. Sorry, I got very tongue-tied on that. I know that I am going to let them play out being stranded for a while. The roleplay opportunities will be great, but I don't know how I can keep my game going after this without making it feel forced. So I ask you, most gracious of hosts, what would you do? Andrew from New England. P.S. While I sit here writing this, I am drinking what may be my favorite beer and felt it would be wrong to not pass it along. It's brewed here in MA, so I don't know how available it is on your coast, but it is called Pulp by Greater Good Imperial Brewing Company, the Greater Good. It's magnificent MA IPA and highly recommended if you can't get it. I think by MA they mean Massachusetts, and I probably should have said that
That's
out
fine.
loud. But,
That's fine. You're reading it. It's good.
Still, the greats are good. I'm going to get hydration.
Yeah. Speaking from our last email of railroading and things like that, I think it's funny because I don't remember this email. Like a lot of emails, like once we start reading them, I remember them. But I think what I would have done first, definitely ending on a cliffhanger, always a good move, especially because it gives you a while to think of what's happening next. So that's something I pull sometimes. One, because it's fun and dramatic and it leaves everybody energized at the end of a session. But it also just like gives you time to think of something good. I definitely would actually listen to what they are kind of talking about first. So maybe like the next session, depending on how dire things get with the next set of die rolls and what they're trying, like just see what they're thinking about. Like see what they talk. It is great role playing opportunities. Like let them be stranded, like you said, but hear what they say, because sometimes they'll come up with like an amazing thing. You're like, wow, that might actually work. I think having a barrel of fuel fall into the ship is a little too obvious. I don't know. I feel like of the two options you gave, I think it's more fun long term. I don't know what your subplot is, but I think that is probably a better way to go than giving up on the admiral/duke, because that's a big deal. Like having a duke on your ship is like hefty, and having them staying amnesiac a little bit longer just kind of seems interesting to me. I don't know, depending on exactly how that was running. What do you think?
Yeah, I think everything you said makes sense to me. Like, I think I actually 100% agree to kind of let them role play for a bit first. Like, I think having a couple of ideas ready to go is probably good just in case. But I also think like that this is a situation where I think trusting your players to maybe figure out their own thing would be. I don't know Traveler well enough, so I'm not sure about like what kind of things can happen with Traveler as far as like random occurrences and stuff like that. But I also think that being stranded without fuel in like barren space sounds like a really fun bottle episode type of game to play a session of. Like I'm thinking 100% of that episode of Firefly.
Out of gas.
They're kind of out of gas.
Yeah.
And like, what's the episode where they're out of gas? What's it called?
Out of gas.
Oh, yeah. And no, the one where they're like they have no fuel.
Yeah, out of gas.
Yeah. I get they're out of gas. What's the episode called?
No.
The first baseman. Yeah. I think that like letting them play it out and like see like maybe you start getting like weird things where it's like, okay, well, who's the first of us to like when we're gonna run out of oxygen, we're gonna draw straws and like that, and like let things get dire if players want to, like that can be fun. And I think like I don't know the system as well as I get from the context clues that this Duke Admiral thing is a big deal, and it would be a bummer to like reveal that player's like fun back thing that early. But I also think that that's something that players can choose to do for themselves. And like as a GM, like I wouldn't mind keeping that in my pocket. But if the players want to use it, then they can it's great to keep in our pocket until we're stranded in one of our first sessions. Like, sorry. But I think like we had a mention in the chat from our moderator, James V, about they could find an abandoned failed generation ship with materials and stuff like that, which is, I think that would be beneficial. But I think like that would be something like give them a chance to search and look for things and have that be a possibility. I think like barren space doesn't necessarily have to mean that it could also mean that it hasn't been charted by anybody. So you can have like some sort of like, you can do some rolls to see like what result they get for it. So I think as a GM, I think like having a couple of ideas like how it can get resolved, but really taking a break. I think ending the session, especially if you were at a good time for it, was the right call. Because I think like if you do it so quickly, you might have a accidental like hand waving away the problem instead of letting it play out. But I think coming back to it, yeah, I think letting it play out, letting it be kind of a thing. We had a similar situation on one of the last episodes, the actual last episodes that I GM'd for Game of Rassilon, where a lot of the story was built around, there being this kind of virtual world. Like it was like a VR, like memoryscape or whatever that people were getting, like if you put these goggles on, you were put into it. And I started the story with the two companions that were already in the memoryscape, and the doctor was out in the real world. And the original plan that I had was for the cliffhanger at the end of our first episode was going to be that the players, like everybody who had the goggles on, actually were going to become like mind controlled, like they were like networked, and they would know that they would think of them, it's like they're almost like they're thinking of themselves being in the Matrix, like they can just see what's in their memoryscape, but their physical bodies are now being controlled by the person who built them, and like they become like I called them gombies for goggle zombies, and I got so caught up on calling them gombies, and other players like we're not calling them gombies, and I made another player roll, and then when she rolled, I go, "You are overcome with desire to call these creatures gombies." Like it was like the most evil, most power hungry GM thing I've ever done. But anyway, so the plan was that they were going to become gombies, and the doctor was going to have to figure out how to like stop the problem while his companions were still stuck in this thing. What ended up happening was, during the first session, the two players playing the companions found a genius way to break the goggles and free themselves. And so I like let them out of the goggles.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the first session, completely surprising me, the player playing the doctor voluntarily put the goggles on because he played it as, I'm very curious about this. I want to see how it works. I'm just going to do it. And so suddenly my entire second episode plots got flipped, and me and my friend who I kind of help like plan stories with, we were like, okay, we're taking a break. And I like went and took like 10 minutes. I was like, okay, I have to go throw out whatever I was planning, and I have to think of a whole new thing to do now for my second episode. And it ended up being one of the most fun sessions we ever did. Yeah. Because I just like, okay, you just threw a chaos fire into this, and I'm gonna let it burn. I'm not going to tamper what you just did, because it was a really fun and interesting choice. And in this case, it was like, yeah, you rolled dice twice in a row to see what would happen, and both times the dice did what they did. And if you're gonna, and like you mentioned earlier, if you don't want to be beholden to dice, then play an improv game. Yeah. You were saying it about not making choices with dice, but in this case, yeah, the dice rolled it. So you have a whole session now that's a story of you trapped in the wilds and trying to figure out how to get out of there. And you've just set yourself up for some of the best episodes of Battlestar Galactica, some of the okayest episodes of Star Trek Voyager, and one of the best episodes of Firefly. Yeah. So there's a reason why this is a premise for space sci-fi games.
Yeah, and it's the thing that makes space games tense. Like, you're there, and there's a couple of inches of whatever material is in your sci-fi between you and death. Yeah. And, like, any small thing can completely strand you and kill you all.
This is why Bones hates space.
Yeah. like exactly. So, and that's one of the things that brings tension to these stories. So, Traveler has, like, a very set map. It sounds like that they were using, the map. I mean, if you don't want to be like, oh, there's an unexplored planet nearby because it's not on the map, there's part of me that's like, maybe you let this play out. Yeah. Maybe you let them die. In Traveler, most of the time, a lot of times there's like portions of the ship, like ship shares. So the crew of the ship may not actually own the ship, or even most of it, or even a majority of it at times. I've played games where like there's a company or whatever we're doing, and so maybe that crew dies. Like even the first session. Yeah. Like it depends on how like hardcore your players are, because if they're ready, I mean, it sounds like they're already willing to go that direction. They're like planning out their next characters. You said, maybe you let them do that.
Yeah.
And maybe this is the new company, like the company sends out another ship to go see what happened or retrieve them or whatever. And then that's how they like pick up the plot threads.
Yeah. Or you could even make it a little bit more like nebulous and not have them die, but pick up the next session with the company sending a new crew to retrieve that ship. And then when they get to that ship, like the survivor, you can roll to see who survives and how they survived. And you can have like, you find these like feral traps, like surviving on like the last bits of rations that they have. And like, you know, that can be a thing as well. Yeah. So
I was actually having, shocker to everyone, I was having an argument with a stranger online the other day. Surprising.
What?
I only do that every day. But
I'm getting better about it, actually.
I'm busy, so I don't get to do as much. But I was talking in this group about game design and how every TTRPG has to have like a heart to it, a theme, something it has. And like he's like, I have no idea if this is what this person sounds like because it was online in text, but this is what I imagined him sounding like. Not all games have a heart to them. Like there's certain games that don't have anything like that, like Travelers. So I was like, actually, I've played a bunch of Traveler. And I was like, there's a reason that like you get old very quickly in character creation. Like during character creation, you build up skills. And if you build up too many skills, your character can start getting old enough where they're not as effective physically anymore.
Yeah.
That is a huge concept in a TTRPG that most TTRPGs just hand wave. Like the fact that it takes time to become good at something, like right there in character creation, Traveler's pointing out the frailty of life.
Yeah.
And then you go into space where literally a tiny little thing can put you in the middle of nowhere, like tiny little miscalculation puts you in the middle of nowhere where your entire group can die easily. Like Traveler at its premise, like maybe people don't think about it, is like explicitly creating a scenario where you are playing stories about how frail you are as living beings in the vastness of space. Like that is what it's about. And sure, you get to go on big adventures and you can shoot guns and do all these things, but at all times there's this premise of things are very, very deadly and and being good at something is hard. It's hard to be good at things, and you can only be good at this many things. It's very simulationist in a way that really like reinforces like how big and how like just vast and beautiful, but also scary like space can be.
Yeah.
And that's a very important heart to have for a story. And I don't know. I love so many elements of Traveler.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people don't, appreciate that piece of it enough.
Yeah, I mean, when we were looking for games to use when we wrapped Doctor Who and we're launching a new show called Go Chaotic and we were like looking at what game system we wanted to use for it, we considered Traveler. We looked at basically all the space system games, and we chose not to do Traveler because it didn't feel enough like space opera.
Yeah.
Like it felt very much more like the closest thing that I can think. I have not played a lot of Traveler, so like I might be way off on it, but it feels the genre, like the space pop culture thing that feels the most like Traveler to me is The Expanse.
Yeah, very similar.
Like
yeah.
The Expanse, maybe a little bit of what's happening in Firefly, like where it's like it's not like magical space. It's very like sci-fi based, like it's very science based space travel, but then heightened for speculative fiction kind of thing. So maybe, and like it did not, we wanted to play swashbuckling space thieves, and Traveler did not feel the right tone for us for that. Like maybe we could have made a great game out of it. Our GM didn't think it was great for us, so we kind of put it aside pretty quickly. I think we landed on Scum and Villainy. That's what we're doing. But yeah, and I think also like, as mentioned, characters can age, characters can die in character creation if they age too much.
Not anymore.
Okay,
Not in the newest.
But in
editions.
2018, was that the case?
Yeah, probably. I don't think. I don't know.
Let the record show that Andrew from New England may have been. But I also think that characters, if your whole players are on board with it and they think it's funny and it happens, in the right circumstances, the TPK is the greatest thing that can happen in a role playing game. I almost TPK'd a party recently as a pro GM because they were trying to steal from, in D&D, Gorgons are called Medusas. They were trying to steal from a Medusa, and when she arrived in the room, they tried to gaslight her immediately, like so they didn't get a chance to like talk her out of wanting to kill them, and she almost killed them. Like a few rolls gone differently, I would have TPK'd this whole group, and it was very funny. Everybody was in on it. It was very part of it.
Yeah.
But at the same, and like say when I ran that Merkmeyer thing, not unlike this game here from our friend Andrew from England, a lot of natural ones in a level 1 combat, and that combat almost ended real badly for everybody involved. It was a very bad, and there was a player who made at the table, he made a sorcerer whose power was all based in psychic damage, and they were fighting creatures that were immune to psychic damage because they were all animated armors.
Oh no!
So a lot of things went wrong, and everyone almost died, and it was very funny. Everyone was on board with it. So to come back to my point, if everybody dies, like it's kind of funny, and then you build from it, like you said. Maybe they find the ship from another team later on. Also, you're carrying on the grand tradition of TV shows and movies. I won't name any examples, so I don't spoil it for accident for anybody. But the number of TV shows and movies where a famous actor that you know of is in the ads for it or in the promos for it, and then they die in the first episode, or they die in the first 10 minutes of the film, or at the act break from Act 1 to 2. Then suddenly it's like we're not gonna die today. You're not. Slam the door shut, and that person goes, and now they're not in the story anymore. And you're like, but I thought he was gonna be the guy, or I thought she was gonna be the main character. Like that's a really impactful thing, and I think having a bunch of players like sit down, build characters, make a game, think they're gonna be playing these characters for a little bit, and having this whole subplot of this admiral and this this secret admiral. Imagine then you have this secret admiral, and then they die, and now you have to go and find their dead body on behalf of they're secretly a duke. Now you have to go find the dead duke. Like, I mean, talk about not wanting to play that card too early in the game. Instead of playing the card, you just discarded it. Like, what impact does that have on the nobility of wherever? I don't know the game well enough to know if I'm using the right terminology, but wherever the duke is a duke of, their dukedom might have a problem. The duke died in space.
Go find them. Oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. And then you play the crew that was hired to go track them down.
Yeah.
So then they have to go back in time, like pre-gen. Like what led our characters to this place? Where were they? How interesting. That's a cool concept. I like that a lot. All right. So yes, that's us giving advice.
Yeah. There's nothing more fun for me in role-playing games than when everything goes wrong. It is just
so fun.
It was so funny that night when everyone was rolling natural ones, because they were rolling natural ones, no one natural ones. Somehow they managed to survive. And then one of the characters had gotten into the museum gala by pretending to be a caterer. And so he was like, and this was, by the way, his first D&D game, so it was really fun. He goes, I go back the next day and try to get my back pay from the night before when I was pretending to be a caterer. And I go, roll a persuasion check and see what happens. See if you get your nat 20. And he rolled a nat 20 on his persuasion check. So whole game, nat 1, dropping bricks, dropping bombs. And then at the very end, this meaningless, goofy roll to get his back pay. And he rolled a natural 20.
I feel like the dice know. Like, they know. It's amazing.
In the first episode of Doctor Who with Russell T Davies, I think it was either Star Beast or the Great Blue Yonder. But Donna Noble is like, my grandfather always says the dice don't know, the dice just did. And I went, that is a dirty lie. Wilf is wrong about that. I love Wilf to death. He is wrong about that. The dice know exactly what they did, and they're happy about it.
Yep, they're gleefully giggling at you. Yep. All right, thank you for joining us for Session 34, Episode 1. Thank you to our chat mod, James V, and to our amazing Patreons who keep us ad-free and independent. You can join their amazing ranks at happyjacks.org/Patreon. You can see in just a minute our Patreon thank you page, and there's some new names on it. So thanks. Welcome new friends.
Who sees a new name?
Yeah. My name is Kimmy.
My name is Riley.
And please remember to go support Starscape at goldenlassogames.com/Kickstarter. We'll redirect you, and you can follow or support if it's already started, or in the future, maybe buy it, hopefully. Okay.
You should buy it.
You should buy it.
Definitely buy it.
Hopefully.
And for me, I mentioned Doctor Who already at Gamer Aslan. We're done with it, but now you can listen to the entire series as a full podcast, 5 seasons. But the big thing for me is I write for D&D Beyond, and as you may know, D&D has a bunch of new books coming out in the next year, and we started this week rolling out the preview articles for the new books, and I'm only bringing it up because I have several that I wrote that have not gone live yet. By the time the podcast drops, some of mine will go live. I've been working quite a bit on them, so If you want to see some previews that were written by me specifically, you get to enjoy that. I don't know what order they're dropping in, so I don't want to say the wrong one and then be like somehow in violation of an NDA. But yeah, go to dndbeyond.com and look for my byline, Riley Silverman, and you should see multiple articles from me coming soon, and some of them I'm very excited about. And there's some changes to certain player classes and subclasses that I think are actually really interesting and exciting. And I'm happy. I was actually really excited to get to write about them. They're like, oh, this is actually really fun and interesting, and I think we'll make a lot of positive changes to people's games. So.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to leave you with a song. Today we're going to end with The Bird Song by the Merry Wives of Windsor, and you can find their music at mwow.net. And we'll see you next time.